This is Henry Wawero, and I welcome you, my listener. And today, I want us to talk about the cycle of domestic abuse. Recently, we had so many cases in our media station whereby a man kills the wife and the children, and later the man kills himself. This has been like the norm in our communities, in our towns. And I thought it is important for us to address this critical issue on the cycle of domestic abuse so that the victim can be set free, so that the abuser can also change. It is important to know that domestic abuse knows no class, it knows no status, it knows no tribe, no religion. It happens to all of us, but we can be set free. Let me begin by talking about the cycle. How does it begin? How does it progress? And what are the end results? And what can a person do for he or she to be delivered? I also want to clarify, when you talk about abuse, it can either happen to the man or to the woman. Even men get abused, but in many cases, especially in our African culture, it is the women who mostly get abused. And so, domestic abuse begins with what we call the calm stage, or the calm phase. In the family or in the relationship, everything is calm, everything is going on well. But the abuser is recording. The abuser is taking note. The abuser may seem calm, the abuser may seem silent, but the abuser is taking record and note of all that is happening in the relationship. And the purpose of taking note is the abuser will use it in the future against the victim. We take the calm phase as like you put water on the jiko. The calm phase is the phase whereby the water is heating up, but it is not yet boiling. And that's the calm phase. But the heat is coming. After the calm phase, then there's what we call the conflict building phase. It is also called the tension phase. Now the abuser begins to create tension with an intention of fighting, with an intention of abuse. Verbal abuse happens in this stage. And the abuser begins to verbally abuse the victim. The abuser begins to speak ill of the victim. And it's as if psychologically the abuser is preparing the victim for what is to come. It is worth noting that for any case where the victim was killed, there was threats. The victim was threatened. Some words were spoken. The abuser talked about killing. The abuser talked about harming the victim. But maybe people never took it seriously, or the victim thought it cannot happen. But to any person listening to me who has been a victim, never take threats easily, because one day the abuser will make true of that threat. So it begins with the calm phase, then the conflict building phase, the tension building phase. Now the water is boiling. Now the boiling point is almost there. At this stage of tension building, the abuser may say, if the abuser is a drunkard, the abuser will say, I'll go drinking. And when I drink, I don't want to meet you here in this house. Or I'm going drinking. When I come, I'll fight you. It is called the tension building phase. The conflict is building up. After the conflict building phase, Then we go to what we call the crisis stage or the fighting stage. This is whereby the abuser now makes real his or her threats. He or she begins to fight. Whatever form of abuse he uses, now he makes it real. It might be spiritual abuse, never go to that church again. It might be financial abuse, I will never help you, I will never give you money. In this level of abuse, the abuse withdraws the financial support. Mostly it is physical abuse. Now he or she fights and injures the victim. After the fighting phase is over, or after the crisis stage is over, now the abuser begins to regret. He or she feels remorse. He or she feels, I have done wrong. There is fear of punishment. There is fear of public opinion. What will people say? And so now the abuser begins to feel sorry. I prefer to call it the sorry stage. The abuser begins to change, but the change is cosmetic. It is temporal. It is not permanent. The abuser may begin to bring gifts. The abuser may begin to come early at home. The abuser might even cry, but those tears are not genuine. Those tears are crocodile tears. The tears are meant to manipulate the victim so that the victim will not go, or if the victim has gone, the victim will come back. And he or she feels sorry for what has happened. Vows are made, commitments are made, that I will never repeat that again. I will never fight again. I will never say that again. I will never abuse your relatives again. I will never injure you again. In fact, some abuser begins to go to church. They even pretend they are looking for help. But the change is just for a time. The true colors are now hidden. The abuser will continue abusing. But for now, he or she has to trap the victim and bring him or her back. And so how do you do that? By using the right words. By talking good. By pretending that you are changing. So that the victim won't go to the lawyer, or the victim won't go to the police station, or the victim won't go talking about it in public. And so it is pretense. It is not real. The abuser has not changed. But many victims are trapped. They think the abuser have changed. If there was temporal separation, the victim comes back. If there was divorce, the victim comes back. Because he or she is deceived that now the abuser has changed. But it's not true. It was only meant to trap the victim back. We are talking about the stages of domestic abuse, and I'm saying it's a cycle. It's a repetitive negative pattern, and the victim need to understand this. I said it begins with the calm stage. Everything is calm, but the abuser is taking note of whatever is happening. The water has not begun to boil, but the water is on the jiko. Then after the calm stage, then there's what we call the conflict building stage, or what we call the tension building stage. And in this stage, I've said verbal abuse takes place. After the tension has been created, then we have what we call the crisis stage. This is where the fighting, the battering takes place. There might be death, there might be injury. Then after all that is done, then we go to the last stage. We call it the comeback stage, where the abuser begins to say sorry. In this stage, the abuser regrets what he or she did. The abuser feels sorry. He or she may begin to come back home early. He or she may begin to come back home with gifts. He or she may renew his or her vows. And the common statement is, I will never fight you again. I will never do that again. It will never happen. I am sorry. Please forgive me. Please come back home. But I have said that this stage is cosmetic change. The change is not permanent. The change is temporal. The abuser wants to win back the victim. The abuser want to bring the victim back home, back to the pit. And so the only way to do it is to pretend that there is change. But that change is only on the outside. The heart has not yet changed. But now the victim is convinced that the abuser have changed. So the victim comes back and the victim is trapped again. And now the cycle repeats itself. After the saying sorry, the calmness comes back. After the calmness, the tension is created once again. After the tension, the fighting comes back again. After the fighting, the saying sorry comes back again. It becomes a cycle. It becomes a negative pattern. And the truth is, many of the abuser, they don't really change. And it's important for the victim to understand that the abuser doesn't change. So it can happen for years and years. At the end of the day, death will take place. It is important for the victim to understand himself or herself. Many of the victims of abuse, they suffer from what we call low self-esteem, from lack of self-worth, from inferiority complex. They believe they are trapped and they have no future. Most of them are dependent. They are dependent on the abuser, either financially or spiritually or in every way possible. It is important for the victim to realize that this cycle never ends. So at the end of the day, it is the victim who needs to deliver himself or herself. What the abuser does is to isolate the victim from friends, from relatives, from the church, or from people who can help him or her. So my counsel and my advice to the victim is, go out and look for support. Go out and look for counsel. Talk it to someone. Talk it to a friend, to a boss, to a co-worker, to a pastor, to a counselor, to your parent. Talk about it. Because many of the victims are traumatized. Many of them are paralyzed with fear. They cannot go out to speak because they are threatened. If you speak about it, I'll kill you. But at the end of the day, it will happen unless you go out and look for help. Go out and talk to someone. The reason why the abuser isolated you was because the abuser knew as long as nobody knows what is happening in your relationship, the abuser will do whatever he or she wants to do without fear. And so he or she doesn't want you to talk about it. So my counsel is, go out, seek for help, seek for support, talk it to someone else confidentially, and look for help and you'll be helped. I'm Henry Waweru. I'm a counselor. I'm a pastor. And I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. God bless you.